Welcome back to Just Between Us by the Chocolate Drops. Today it's just me and Aida. Keisha couldn't join us for this episode, but she'll be right back with us soon. So today we're talking about something that a lot of parents are navigating right now: gentle parenting versus how many of us were raised. So, because the way we grew up and the way people are raising their kids today can look very different. So, we're getting into what gentle parenting actually means and what parts we agree with and what parts are challenging, and how our own childhood affects the way we parent. So, to get things started, let's ask, what was discipline looking like in your household as you grew up?
I would say my parents were very loving and they were fair, but they were also strict. So, like, as far as like the old school type parenting where it's like, you better not talk back, like, we, of
Mhm.
course, had to be very respectful. If we were getting in trouble, so to speak, we just had to like listen and then accept whatever discipline there was. There was no like compromising or negotiating what our discipline would look like. If we had to go to our room or get a spanking, then that's what it was based on what it is that we did. So, I would say it was very, like, your typical Black home parenting type of setup.
Yeah. Same. And my dad was the disciplinarian in my house. And I mean, they were my parents were strict. They had like clear expectations on what we could and could not do. And if we didn't do them, we were disciplined for them if, we didn't follow through. And like looking back, I never thought like, oh my gosh, my parents were so hard or they were so difficult. I'm never gonna treat my children like that. It never felt that way. I felt like the spankings I got most definitely needed them.
Yeah.
And the way they cared for our needs, even when being disciplined. I remember my dad was always very calm whenever we were getting a spanking, and I remember him telling my mom, like, "You cannot whip these kids when you mad because 'cause you'll hurt 'em." So he was like, "You have to be calm when you know, do any kind of discipline so that it's done with love and with not so much gentle, but, like, so that the point is being set across." So, yeah, that one thing I really appreciated about him is that he was always calm. Even though I was getting a whooping, he did it calm. So, what were your parents like, what were they strict about? So, you mentioned that they were strict, so what was it that they were actually strict on?
I was just expected, like you said, they had clear expectations. I had to follow the rules. So as far as just like, you know, we were a very spiritual family. So following that routine, that was expectation that, at certain time I needed to be up and ready to go out the door.
Mhm.
Doing well in school was an expectation. So like making good grades, making sure that I was doing being respectful to my teachers. So education was always important. So that was a thing that was to be strict on. And then just I guess just being responsible, doing my chores, not running around the house breaking things and always being respectful to like the elderly ones was big. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. A little different with the school and education thing, and even though we went to school, I'm so glad that my parents weren't, like, really strict on grades. So, as long as we were passing, like, they were good, because I grew up with, some friends where, like, if they got a C, like, their parents was, like, flipping out on them, like, "You better not bring home nothing but an A and a B." And I remember there was a time where I got a D, like, on a test, and I was so hurt. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just got a D." Like, that just had never happened to me. And so I'm crying, and I'm telling my dad, like, "Look, I got a D on my test." And he was like, well, isn't that passing?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's a D." And he was like, "Well, shoot, as long as you pass, like, that's good." So they never gave me such a hard time, like, grade-wise. So I appreciated that because school could be stressful.
And
Um
I don't think my parents put that stress on me. I think that was just an expectation that I always put on myself, that I wanted
Yeah.
to have certain grades. And then, of course, I would get rewarded,
Mhm.
for having, like, a certain amount of A's and certain amount of B's. So I think that just motivated me. It was that kinda, like, positive reinforcement. And then they kinda, like, built that intrinsic motivation, and so I just grew up wanting to, like, "Oh, I wanna have straight A's," or I wanna so
Yeah.
that was more of my own expectation, it wasn't something that was expected of me.
Okay, so yeah, I was gonna say, like, I was putting myself in a category where I wanted to see certain grades, or I wanted to do, well in certain classes because that's just what I wanted for myself. So I was just glad that they didn't put that pressure on me. But I was definitely expected to, do chores. We had to wash dishes, clean
Mhm.
bathrooms, vacuum, keep our rooms clean, and yeah, like doing those certain things. And then like the whole bickering, because I have a sibling and we was fighting and doing stuff, like, we got in trouble for that too. So, and then you brought up, like, a spiritual family, so yeah, absolutely, like, we're, going out in service and going to the Kingdom Hall and doing those certain things. We were expected to, like, not fall asleep.
Right?
Couldn't fall asleep, we had to take naps before so we could, sit
Be
still, pay
alert and
attention,
stay
not play.
focused,
Yeah,
yep, definitely don't run around at the hall.
right, no running around. Absolutely. So when we mention respect, what did respect look like when you were a kid?
I would say just listening when I'm spoken
Mhm.
to, responding in a respectful tone and way, saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Because I grew up in Kentucky, so we're in the South, so that was an expectation, especially to ones who are older
Mhm.
than me. Speaking to people when they spoke, just having manners and being polite, like saying yes and thank you and
Yeah.
sorry, things like that, was very important.
Yeah, same. So, like, yeah, yes, please, thank you, those type
Hmm.
of things. Not interrupting when the grown-ups are talking.
Oh, that's another big
And
one. Hmm.
yeah, and then if they're in a room talking, like, "What are you in here for? Unless it's life-threatening, you need to be over there." You know?
Yep,
Not
exactly.
with the grown-ups. And, but, I wasn't raised with the whole, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir." And my parents weren't, like, Southern, even though they were
From Florida.
raised in Florida. They didn't have, like, that Southern they weren't raised in that Southern way. So, yeah, so
So how
they
did
didn't
you
grow up.
address adults when you were a child?
Excuse me?
Oh, so you didn't, like, say their
Not
name or anything?
No, I didn't say that, just, "Excuse me." But
'Cause,
if I
like, that
said
was
their
another big
name, it w
thing. We were to never say their an
yeah.
adult's first name, like, to call an
Yeah, that was
adult
like a
by a first
no-no.
name would be so disrespectful, like, I knew I would get in
Yeah.
trouble.
So, yeah, so for people like grown-ups, I would say Miss so and
Mr.,
so.
Mrs.,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mr. So and so, or yeah. So not but if I said thank you, I didn't have to say like, "Thank you, ma'am," or "Thank you, sir." I would just say,
Thank
"Thank
you.
you." And even addressing my parents, like, if they called my name, like, "What?" You just did not say,
Oh,
be like,
no.
"What?" You'd be like,
No.
"Yes."
Yes. I better not even say, "Yeah," because then that would be taken like, "Excuse you? Did you just say 'yeah'? You don't say 'yeah' to
Right?
me." It was always, "Yes." "Yes,
Yes,
mother."
yeah.
"Yes, father." "How can I help you?
See?
How can I serve you?" Because I always had to
Right.
do chores, like, "Can you bring me this?
Eh
Can you bring me that?"
yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
That
"Okay."
was my dad would be, like, real big on that, like, it'd be something right there. He'd be like,
Right.
"Can you give me that?"
Right. I'll be all the way in the, like, downstairs, my dad be upstairs. I would have to come all the way upstairs, get him a cup of ice, and fix him something to drink, and I'm just like, "Your legs work now." But you definitely know I was not gonna say that,
You can't say it,
but
you
that
just
was what
gotta
I was
do it.
thinking. I just was like, "Okay, let me run up there and do it."
Yep. Might be mumbling under your breath or rolling your eyes
Yeah.
without them saying it, but you gotta do it. Okay, so what do you think gentle parenting means? Like, what is your definition of gentle parenting?
So, from my limited information that I have on it, see gentle parenting as being like t talking to your child, asking them about their feelings and how they feel, but also giving them discipline, but it's more of like a, like, "Let's talk about this" approach first, or "Let's process
Mhm.
your feelings," and then once you acknowledge their feelings and validated that, then you work through a form of discipline.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like growing up, my feelings weren't really taken into consideration, and it's just there's no, like, ill against my parents, but it almost feels like, "Well, this is what was supposed to this is what I expected of you, you didn't do it, you're you're in trouble." So I'm either getting stuff taken away or most likely it was a spanking, like, it was the most discipline thing that I got was the spanking, but, yeah, my feelings, I feel like wasn't really taken into consideration a lot. Hmm, might be like a little therapy session. 'Cause I
Right?
never really thought about it until now that, yeah, my parents weren't like, "Well, how does this make you feel? Well, why do you feel that way?" Or like, yeah, because like,
Yeah.
kids have feelings, and I feel like they're people too, and sometimes, especially the way we were raised or old school type of parenting, it's a do as I say, and, like, there's no
Because I said so,
questions.
and that would be
Yeah,
the answer, right?
yeah, and that was another thing, like, you can't ask
Mhm.
why.
No.
And sometimes you legitimately just like, why? Because you didn't understand, not because
Yeah.
you were
Being
wanting to be
disrespectful.
disrespectful.
Mhm.
And so sometimes my kids will ask why, and I feel like my husband will feel like it's disrespectful because that's the way he was raised, and he'd be like, "'Cause I said so," you know? But I know my kids, and I'm like, sometimes they really are curious and they wanna know why, and so I'll give them an explanation, and then once they know the explanation, they're like, "Oh, okay, like, yeah, that makes
That
sense.
makes
Okay, I'll
sense,
go do
right?
that," you know?
And I think
So
sometimes that could be even more effective than a spanking is because a child needs to understand what they're doing, why it's wrong or why it could be dangerous or why it's harmful and know that like you're trying to protect them, that this is out of love and it's in their best interest. And I think when they understand that, then logically you would think that, most children
right,
will want to fall in line and be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this because this is the reason why my parents are telling me, versus as saying, "'Cause I told you so," and then there's no reason, and it just feels like an authoritarian type of situation where, like, I just have to do it, but I don't know why I'm doing this?
right,
And
and
so they're more
that's
likely to rebel.
right,
Yeah.
and I think another thing is, like, growing up, even though I was a daddy's girl and I love my daddy, but, like, I was scared of him. So, like, a lot of the things that I was obedient for because I was scared, and I didn't wanna get in trouble for it. But I don't necessarily want my kids to be afraid of me. I want them to respect me enough and to understand why I have these expectations, and then they use that for motivators to be more obedient, not just because, "Ooh, because if mama come home and see this, oh, she gon"
Mhm.
I want them to be like, "No, mom works hard. Mommy does this for us. I can at least keep my room clean, and that I could do that for her." And a lot of times I explain that, especially to my son, he's so understanding 'cause I'll be like, "Look, I work all day. I spend this much on all of your things, and I do this and I do that. The least you could do is take care of your stuff and keep your room clean." And then when I explain that to him, he's like, "You know what? That makes sense." And he'll make sure he does those things to, you know, keep his room clean or take care of his things so that they don't get raggedy. So, yeah, I think that's really important is getting their understanding, understanding their feelings, and then explaining even ourselves. Because sometimes I feel like as parents, the old school way is I don't have to explain myself because I said so.
Yeah.
So do you feel pressure to parent a certain way today?
Um, I wouldn't say I feel pressured, but I do feel like there's certain stigmas now in our generation
Mhm.
versus, like, how we grew up. So, like, when we grew up, spanking was pretty common, like, if you saw someone get the belt out, like, people wouldn't look twice. But I feel like now if you were to walk around or, like, just say if you were in the store and you saw someone, like, get a belt or, like, a little paddle or something out of their purse and start, like, paddling their child in public, then people would be like, "What are you doing? Like, what is going
Right.
on?" And, they'd be ready to call DCF on you. So, like, I feel like, of course, it's just different, but I don't feel like I have any type of, like, expectation. I think generally anyway, my personality just leans more toward the gentle parenting approach kind of anyway, because
Mhm.
I'm more soft-spoken. I'm not really a person that, like, I feel like I can control my emotions pretty well as far as, like, anger, so I don't feel
Mhm.
like I don't see myself my son's still very young, so I don't have this issue as much yet, but I don't see myself, like, having to yell or but I don't know. Like I said, it's early.
I can't I can't
But,
wait.
like, I'm sure I probably will.
I know that
It's
was,
gonna be one of those things you say, like, "I will never yell," and then I'm gonna be the main one yelling. They be like, "Girl, you always yelling at your boy, like, calm down."
I know. It's
I
so funny because, like, pressures of life, like, it's not just the taking care of the kids that are on your mind, but then you have work and you have your own issues, and then you're
Mhm.
married and you have your marriage, situations that you have to take care of. So it's always, like, a lot on us, and so sometimes when the kids are, maybe acting a certain way, when you take out your frustrations on them, it's not mostly just the kids, it's just, like,
Stress,
everything.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, just stresses of life. And so I won't say I'm a fusser. I say I'm a reformed fusser. I have come out of that. And so my mom was definitely a fusser. Mom, so if you watching this, yeah, she was a fusser. And so she didn't do a lot of spanking, she fussed. And so, growing up, sometimes we'd be like, "Oh my god, like, here she go again, like, she's fussing," you know? And I was starting to be that way, and my son would be like, "Oh, you always fussing." And then I had to, like, really step back and examine and look at myself because, like, I hate to be that way,
Yeah.
you hear, like, "I hate when you make my voice do this," because yeah, but we make our voice do that. And so I really had to, like, step back, calm down, and I'd be like, "Look, you don't want me to fussing, so I need you to be obedient," because I'm trying to not take it there, but I need you to, get it together. So it's a lot just of pressure all the way around just in our personal lives, and sometimes when I look back at my parents and I'm like, they were dealing with a lot because sometimes we see our parents and we think they're just heroes and they could do anything and they don't do anything wrong. But, like, my parents were dealing with a lot and then trying to raise us, and then when we're not being obedient or me and my brother are bickering and fighting and doing a whole bunch of stuff, I see why my mom fussed because she already had a lot on her plate,
Mhm.
and now we coming in bickering and fighting about
Adding
something
to it,
stupid.
something silly, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like as a child, you never understand and it's like certain
Mhm.
life experiences you don't understand until you're actually in it and experiencing it
Right.
for yourself because like, I think back, and I would have never thought about all the stress and things that my parents had going on, but now I'm
Right.
enduring that as an adult, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
"Wow," like, they did all this, had 5 kids, like, shout out to
Wow.
them. You gotta deal
Yeah.
with 5 kids, raise 5 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really love my parents and respect them, so and in many ways, I see myself, like, disciplining my child the way I was raised and disciplined because I feel like I came out pretty good. There's
Yeah.
certain things I would change or tweak a little bit, but for the most part, I see myself following kind of that those guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you would tweak or change?
I think, like, my parents did a good job with talking to us,
Mhm.
so, like, I don't feel like there was things that I didn't understand why there were rules or expectations for certain things, they always explained that. However, the taking my feelings into consideration, like, it would be a dialogue, but it's like you always knew at the end of the day that no matter what you said, the result was gonna be the same? So I think, like, I would rather have, like, a dialogue where there is an opportunity to maybe change their perspective or change their mind because, like, yes, we had dialogue, but it was still gonna be their way regardless of
I
anything I
know.
could have thought of to, like, explain my case?
I know my dad would always say, "If you had a little girl and she did what you did, how would you discipline her?" And I'd be like, "Oh, just talk to her, and I'll give her another chance because I know she's sorry." And he'd be like, "Okay, well, when you have your little girl, you do that, but today you get you get a woman."
Right? So it's
And
like,
I'm still
why
getting
did you
whoopings.
ask
So I'm like,
that?
"Why are you asking?"
Why? What's the point of asking me that? Like, if you're not gonna
Right, and it was almost as if he wanted me to say, "Oh, yeah, I'll give her a spanking too," like that not happening.
Right?
So, yeah, so I definitely would tweak that as well, and then not freaking out. So you know, there's especially when they learning how to talk and they're watching certain things, you know they gon' say a bad word. And so
Mhm.
when they say the bad word, I did not freak out, and I'm like, "Hey, where'd you learn that word from? This word means this, and we don't wanna say that," and then talk them through instead of like, "Don't you ever say that word again," or you know, and then, like, reacting in a way because then it kinda triggers them to like, "W Why I can't say that word, and
Exactly.
what if I say it again?" And then, all kids wanna try you, so they try it again. But
Mhm.
just having that open dialogue so that we can go into a reasoning and explanation and not freak out every time something may go wrong or something's not quite the way we hoped it to be, but talk it out so that I can understand them and then they can understand me.
Yeah, it's really just about showing empathy, like you said, being calm and
Mhm.
understanding their feelings. But you're not being permissive either. So I mean, you still have to
Definitely not.
be
Yeah.
discipline them and have those clear boundaries.
Yeah. Most definitely. So what do you think is the hardest part of staying patient as a parent? Hmm. Whew.
I think we kind of already talked about it. Like when we have so many other things that we're dealing with, whether it's
Yeah.
work, relationship problems with your marriage, because having kids affects your marriage and the time you have with your partner, when you're dealing with just stress and your own like time of the month and different things and just like all
Yeah.
types of things. And then certain things happen and it could test your patience, when they're not listening or they do something you already told them in the already in the past not to do and they do it again. Those type of things can test your patience, but
Yeah.
I feel like, just got to take a deep breath. Sometimes you might just have to address it later and be like, look,
Yeah.
mommy's not happy about this right now, but we're going to take a moment
Yeah.
and we'll talk about this later when I have a chance to process and get myself
Mhm.
together.
And it probably hasn't happened with you yet, but I know for me, 1, having 2 kids and then repeating myself, that is so hard to be patient with because 'cause I'm like, "How many times do I have to say, 'Do this?' Or how many times have I told you?" So that gets really hard and patient to be patient, and then it takes me back to, like, my parents absolutely did that, like, they absolutely hated repeating themselves, and they would have to repeat themselves. So that and then the kids bickering and fighting over, like, the silliest things, them going back and forth, having to say something, trying to get the last word, and it's just like,
Yeah.
"Y'all fighting about nothing." Like,
Yeah.
y'all
Oh,
go
I
to your
remember
room.
one of their fights when they had the Pokemon cards. That was a whole big thing. I was like, "Man, they are serious about these Pokemon cards."
Right? About to shut the whole house down over some car I'll take them cards, throw them in the trash, like, "I don't care about these cards." Like, get it together. So what is one thing you hope that your child or my kids will remember, how we raised them?
I think overall, I just want them to know how much I love them, And so I think I want them to look back and be like, my parents really loved me. They really cared for me. They sacrificed for me so that, I could be where I'm at now. And I want them to look back and like know that, we carved out quality time and that I
Mm.
always cared about their feelings and their well being. And, just have like a nice, cozy, warm feeling when they think about their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, same for me, like, I want them to be able to look back and, like, rate their childhood 10 out of 10
Mhm.
and know that even though they were disciplined, that those disciplines weren't because I'm being mean, but because I cared about them and I'm trying to make sure they stayed straight, and that the discipline was because I cared, not just because I'm being mean mommy.
Mean, yeah, it's like an act the discipline is an act of love,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. So, parents, I wanna know what it is that you are doing. Do you agree with gentle parenting? What is your take on gentle parenting? And if any of this resonated with you, we wanna hear them in the comments. So, until next time, this is the Chocolate Drops, and we will catch you next week.
Bye.